Hi Ellie, how you doing? You alright? Thank you for
Hey, I'm good.
hey.
How are you?
Yeah, well, good side, good. It's good. It's good to see you again after like quite a few years.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Yeah, I don't think I've
Yeah,
seen you since you
yeah,
lived in Nottingham. Because I think the last time you
yeah.
came for an extended period of time, I was in Australia for that year. So I
All
don't,
right,
yeah, I've not
yeah,
seen you for a long time.
yeah. It's been a couple of years. It's crazy how time flies sometimes, isn't it?
I know. This is the thing. Like, I feel like I only came back to England a short time ago, but it was about 5 years ago. So this past 5 years has just zoomed by. Like
Yeah.
a lot's
No, it's
happened. It also feels like nothing's happened sometimes. But then when you think back, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, a lot has.
yeah, it's mad. It's like when you see it on Instagram, you see these like, or on Facebook, it's like 10 years ago this happened on this date, and you're like, what?
It's great. We left school because I think you're in my school. Yeah, we left school 10 years ago, which is just baffling to me. Like, we left school a
Yeah,
decade ago. It makes me feel old.
yeah, yeah. It does me now. Actually, I'm thinking about it like, damn.
When you think
But
about that time frame. Oh,
I
whole
know.
decade ago.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, like back then, we just used to worry about like your phone, your pay as you go phone. I think that was it. And
Yeah, pay as you go phone, and it was back in the times of MSN and Bebo and MySpace.
then it's crazy.
It's all changed
But
now. Now we've all got everything just on our phones to just scroll
yeah,
through whenever we want them.
yeah. I mean, it's amazing how technology evolves and how people evolve. I find it fascinating.
Mm.
Um, but like, I know. A couple of minutes ago, we was talking about lockdown, and you were saying like how some girls might have been feeling throughout this.
Yeah, so I guess this goes with the having just a phone to scroll through at all times. With social media, having it at your fingertips, I think a lot of people maybe feel. Well, I know we were talking about perfectionism. I think maybe girls in particular, some guys may feel this way, who are maybe used to getting their hair cut or their nails done or their eyebrows done or whatever it may be. And with salons being closed for so long, I've noticed there's been less pictures of. Obviously, there's no group pictures because no one's really seen each other, but people haven't even really been taking selfies. And I feel that maybe some people have got into a mindset of feeling that they need to look a certain way or put on a certain look for not necessarily for likes or whatever, but I feel that maybe they look at themselves and see imperfections that others may not see because they're used to seeing themselves only looking good in their heads if they've been to the salon or if they've done this or that or if they're dressed up for a night out. And I feel that now lockdown's easing up, maybe people might get a little bit more confidence in themselves and maybe not feel the need to wear makeup or feel the need that they've got to have their hair straightened or curled or whatever it may be for them, and maybe embrace their own natural selves a little bit more and not feel that they need to be so, not perfectionists, but maybe not dig holes at themselves that others don't see, if that makes sense. Like, I feel that a lot of people perhaps see flaws in themselves that may have been heightened by all of this because, oh my gosh, I'm used to having my nails done every month and it's been 5 months. What do I do? This is embarrassing, or whatever it may be for the particular person. So I feel that lockdown may have either made that worse for some people, or maybe it made some people a little bit more confident and they've realized that they don't need it and that they are okay in their own skin. I don't know how that feels from a guy's perspective. I've had moments like that.
No, it's interesting, like you said, to hear it from a different perspective, like female perspective, because I suppose, like, yeah, you there were those kind of regular things you do, like might get all right, your nails done or your hair done, things like that.
Mm.
Not as much probably, to do the things that you usually do. So, like, yeah, you kind of like might have that routine and might, like I said, kind of connect with those parts of yourself probably. Uh,
Oh, you've frozen. I don't know if you can see me moving, but you've frozen for me. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if you can hear me, but you've like completely frozen on sound and image for me. Uh-oh.
Right. So yeah, yeah, we're back now because my phone overheated, so I had to wait a sec. But
Technical issues.
yeah, yeah. So I was gonna say, like, women and haven't gone to get their nails done, they might not be able to get their hair done, and they're kind of like, those kind of parts of your confidence where you might feel, a certain way when you get your nails done, your hair. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of reconnect some of those parts of yourself, and you might be more some people might be more comfortable now because they've realized they haven't had to go and do that. They don't might not
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah. And I think some people may have seen, I've noticed this. I don't know if it's widespread or just sort of the people I follow. There's been quite a number of people who've started posting like fresh face selfies, as they will label them. And it's nice to see so many people who maybe I've not even seen without makeup before showing themselves as themselves, and it's like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. Like, it's so great that she can see this in herself now, if that makes sense. And seeing different
Mm,
sides to people, I think it sort of makes people perhaps feel a little bit vulnerable, because social media can be a nasty place. Like, there are a lot of evil, judgy comments that sometimes happen, maybe not so much for our age group, but just in general, the internet can be a horrible place to be vulnerable in, because
mm.
there are trolls, as they get called, and if your picture or whatever it may be happens to get the attention of people with that mindset, one comment can ruin your whole week.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you hear that on a day where you might not be having a great day, it could just stay in your mind for ages and think, oh my gosh, everyone thinks I've got a massive nose, or oh my gosh, my eyebrows look terrible. If they don't like it, everyone must hate it, or whatever it may be. It could just be a tiny passive comment that then really sticks with people. So it's nice to see people embracing themselves and not maybe ignoring those comments, but if you see someone confident in their own skin, it's harder to attack those people with negative comments because they're probably not going to care. So it sort of deters the trolls away from them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. I think, like you said, it's nice to see that kind of, is it like that hashtag, trend of like people not wearing makeup and
Mm-hmm.
kind of being the opposite, because I think so many people, you know aren't used to doing that. Especially, some people do it on Facebook or whatever now and then, but I
Yeah,
think with social media, you can be judged, based on a picture. You can be attacked. You can. It's almost
yeah,
like a free open space for people to take a cheap shot, and that
yeah.
happens. And
All the
so,
keyboard
there's,
warriors.
yeah, yeah, and I've seen it, and I think it's very, very visible, especially when you got these posts where there's thousands of comments and you're scrolling through and you're like, wow.
Yeah,
But I think, like, you have to be yourself and block that out in some way if you can.
yeah,
Or just to filter it out, just to see it and just try not to let it in.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I think with social media, it's difficult because it portrays an image of how you should be and what you should do and things like that. So people feel like they have to look a certain way based on how others are looking in the world.
Yeah, all the
So,
popular hashtags or trends or whatever it may be. People feel they have to jump on that bandwagon, as a way of
mm,
phrasing it, I guess. It can
yeah,
be difficult. But even with like bigger platforms that may not be individuals, they might be companies, so magazines or whatever, making people feel they've got to look a certain way. So a woman has to look a certain shape, a man's got to have a certain amount of muscle, or his hair or facial hair has to be in a certain way. And I think a lot of people fall under those pressures, and a lot of those are fake. A lot of them are edited or photoshopped. So I feel like people feel, even with maybe not pictures of themselves, pictures they may take of even their dogs or a walk they may have been on, or a holiday snap or food or whatever it may be, they feel they have to edit it to make it look good enough for others, even though it looks great as it is. I feel there's pressures there sometimes. If that, I don't know if you ever feel like that, and I feel like it sometimes, but I'm trying to steer away from that. I'm trying to make things a little more just as they are, because I know I definitely not necessarily have had comments that are negative, but in my mind I feel like sometimes I'm being judged even if I'm not. So I feel like it's easy for people to fall into that mindset even if it's not triggered directly at them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think like, we can post something, we can put a filter on it or something like that, and I think we can all do that sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's we try and we're always looking for the perfect kind of shot or the right kind of lighting or something like that.
Yeah.
And it can be automatic, and you have to catch yourself sometimes. You're like, did I just put a color on there for some reason? Like, so I definitely do it sometimes, but I think it just becomes so automatic. I'm like, did I really need to do that? Not really.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to think about not putting a filter on. Or if you don't put a filter on, you
Mm,
feel almost the need to put hashtag no filter. Everyone needs to know there's no filter on this, because it's become a thing in
mm,
its own right by being so separate to the norm of all of the filters and editing. It's like we were talking about earlier, with the photography I do. I'm by no means an expert at it. Like I know very little about it for the amount of photos I take. I tend to use my camera just on auto mode. I don't really know about the proper
mm,
settings to use. And the editing I do, I use sort of free apps to do it that you can just download from the Play Store or Apple Store. So I've never looked at Photoshop or anything like that. But I feel like for me, the whole perfectionism idea that is sort of not enforced on social media, it's just the way that it's sort of run. So I feel people think that everything's got to look perfect. So if I started editing things through things like Photoshop, I feel like I'd love it and I think I'd actually really enjoy it. But I know there'd be moments where even if a picture looked good, in my head I'd be like, wait, no, I need to edit it some more. It's not perfect enough yet. So I sort of worry that I'd fall into that mindset, which isn't the
mm.
greatest mindset to have. So I think that's what's held me back from doing it. But I need to just get over that. I'm trying to get past that point and think, no, it's fine. Like, it's good as it is. If that
Yeah,
helps me to get to that place, hopefully it will. Because there's a lot of photography
yeah,
pages I follow on Instagram, and some of them are fantastic. But there's also some that have taken it just with their phones and not even edited whatsoever, and their photos are just as fantastic. But it's a different
mm,
style or technique or
mm,
whatever it may be. So it's just, I don't know. I think perhaps for me, seeing some people's photography, I think it's phenomenal. And I sort of think, oh, mine has to be as good as theirs. So if
mm.
I felt like mine wasn't as good as theirs, I'd be disappointed in myself, even if other people did like my work, if that makes sense. So I think
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me,
yeah,
no one's judging me negatively. I'm convincing myself that others will judge me negatively. But that's
yeah,
probably from social media too.
yeah. I think a lot comes down to it. What it all comes down to is, I find, we're so caught up in what other people are going to think before we
Yeah,
even post it, before we even post the stuff, and when we post it, our attention is the opinions of other people. What other people are going to think, and half the time, they're people that we're never even going to meet, the people that we don't even know,
yeah. It
and
just strangers, just strangers. We care about the opinions of strangers.
yeah, which is pretty crazy. And I think like it's just kind of like working on that, and we're all different. We've all got, I think, experienced that, and it's just like I said, just trying to like overcome that hurdle.
Yeah,
And I think it's normal to some extent. Because I mean, like I said, with editing pictures, like you've got some like really great photos, and you take them on a Canon, is it? What camera is it?
I've got my camera's away at the back of my wardrobe because I had a bit of a reshuffle.
Yeah, yeah,
But
don't
I've
worry.
got a Sony RX10 Mark IV. So that might mean something more to others. It might not mean anything to some people. But some of the photos I just take on my phone as well. And then the thing is, with the camera I've got, it has the potential to take some absolutely fantastic shots. And I've got a tripod and things like that, but I've never used that yet either. And I've had the camera for over a year. So it's just stepping through that out of my comfort zone. Like if I go walking quite a lot and I'll see other people with massive cameras or the massive lenses, and I think, oh my gosh, I want to do that. Like they don't care that I'm walking past. They don't care what I think, and I need to get into the same mindset as them so I can actually make the most out of the camera that I've got, because there is really big potential there, and I know that I'd love it. And I think it's good that I'm aware that it's me holding me back, but it's just I need to get that tiny little spark of confidence to just do it and then see where that takes me.
Yeah, I think like your camera sounds like a machine gun, by the way. So Sony Mark IV.
I know they have such long names. Yeah.
If you say I've got a Sony Mark IV in my bag, they'd be like, "What is that, a gun or something?"
Like, what can that do?
Yeah, because I think, like you said, like I mean, if I can give any advice, is it's like me with the podcast. Like when I started doing this, I didn't do it for about 2 years because I was scared of doing it. I was afraid what were people going to think. So I just put it off. But the more you do something that's difficult, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
And
And then
it's
I'll
just
be
stepping into that
thinking, why did I
unknown.
wait so long?
Okay.
And then I might be thinking, why did I wait so long? Which I guess maybe you've experienced too, with you saying that
Yeah.
you held back for a while.
So I mean, it's normal. I think we're all guilty of it in some extent, and it is hard. It is difficult, and it is scary. But I think as well, when you'll see that you're posting nice photos and they're really great. They're all very different as well.
Thank
And I
you.
think no, yeah, no, you're welcome. And I think like that you're providing value through what you're doing, and people will like that.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, that'll make probably a difference someone's day if they see that, or that'll inspire them to do it, to get out there. So it's all it's quite a universal thing. By you doing what you're doing, someone else might be like doing photography, and I'm like, oh shit, so I'm going to get my camera and I'm going to do that more.
Yeah.
So it's that yin and yang, I think, with what you're doing and just how things work.
I think I know where you're coming from with that. I think for me, I find sort of the similar stages I'll get at where I might just be sat, not really doing anything. I've got a free day, but I do the typical thing of procrastinating. I'll just be scrolling, and then I'll say, oh, someone's walking. That looks really nice. Where's that? And I'll go on the hashtag of wherever it may be and see other really nice photos of that particular place. And then I'll think, okay, I'm going to go there tomorrow. And then I go there, I love it, and then I'll take a photo, and then people who may be following me. I've had messages before, for example, like, oh, whereabouts is this? This looks really nice. Or where'd you go walking? So I know that even if it's only 1 or 2 people, it's helped how you've just suggested that maybe they want to get up and go to the same place or do a similar thing. So it's almost like a domino effect with the type of photos I take, because they tend to be when I'm out walking, or they might be of animals or of a little forest or somewhere in the Peak or Lake District, and people might not think of doing that. But I think because everyone's been so tied up in lockdown and so restricted, so many more people might jump on the same bandwagon of wanting to get out in nature, wanting to go for a little walk, wanting to take their dog or their kids, or even on their own. Like walking on your own can be really nice too. It's great having company, but it's also something that if your friends are busy, or your partner, or if you're single, like if you can go and do it on your own. It doesn't have to be a group activity, so it can get people more confident being out in the world on their own too, which can be good. It's helped me at times when my anxiety's been bad, because I have anxiety, and walking is the one thing that no matter how bad it is, it makes me forget. Like I'll be walking, even if it's like not too far, I can go for a little walk, I'll see a robin or a squirrel, and then I feel better, which probably sounds silly or like a child getting excited by squirrels, but for me that's something that I know makes me feel better. And there's been moments where I've perhaps gone for a walk around Attenborough Nature Reserve and robins have flown down and fed from my hand. And for me, that was just a really special moment. And not a lot of people get to experience that because of the whole hustle and bustle and living the city life. You have to sort of slow yourself down. And I think if other people had moments like that, they might see it in a similar way. Because I think, yeah, escaping city life's great, but I think sometimes escaping that and just connecting yourself to something a little bit more real can really change your mindset, even if it's just for a few days. And I think it can really help people if they're stressed out.
Mm. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And like, I think like it does help your mental health, doesn't it? And it does make you feel better,
Mm.
by going for a walk. I used to have anxiety and things like that in the past.
Yeah.
I think like, being around nature is very grounding. And I think that's like one of the good things about nature. And it's so important. And like you said, by you going out, you're going somewhere new, you're doing something different.
Yeah.
And, you might connect with someone who's doing the same thing that you are.
Yeah.
Um,
You find so many friendly people. Like, as a rule, you might get the odd person maybe on your street nodding a good morning to you, but in general, in cities, that's not the norm. But if you go for a walk in the forest, or if you go for a
mm,
walk in the Peak District, every person that walks past you will say, "Hello, how are you? You all right?" Or give you at least a friendly nod. Like,
yeah.
everyone seems more, not more friendly, that's probably sounds harsh to city life, but it's
The,
almost like they're automatically in a community, and they're
mm,
just, it's like, "Oh, you like walking too, hi," or, "Oh, we're out doing the same thing." Like, it just sort of connects you to people who you never would have ever seen. So
mm,
that's a nice part of it as well.
yeah. You're kind of all on that same kind of like wavelength, aren't you? You just,
Yeah.
you've got probably a bit more clarity in time than because I think like I lived in Nottingham for like 19 years, and
Yeah, so you know what
it,
it's like here.
yeah. So it's like, you haven't almost got time because people are thinking about where they need to be next. Whereas if you're like on a walk or you're somewhere, you're like, you're more in the moment. I think that's the word, isn't it? You're
Definitely.
you're in the moment more, so you're more
Definitely.
connected
Yeah.
to
And you
who
lose
you are
track
and
of
stuff.
time. You sort of, like you said, like what you do next can be the mindset you have in a city where you're rushing around, hopping from one thing to another, and you might not even find 5 minutes to sit down and have a cup of tea. But for me, at
Mm,
least, when I'm out walking, what feels like 5 minutes could be 3 hours. Or, you lose yourself completely. You lose track of time. You're not in a rush, and like you say, you're in the moment. And I think it helps to calm me. And I've never felt bad, even if I felt tired. It's always been a good tired after a long walk. I've always
yeah,
felt better, even if I wasn't having a bad day. It's always uplifted me or made me feel more positive than I was feeling before I've been outside. And it's different to the whole going for a walk in the city, because although it's still exercise, it's different walking in nature than it is to walking along a main road where there's lorries and sirens and beeping and car fumes and people shouting or whatever it may be. It's a completely sort of different mindset that you get in when you walk away from all of that hustle and bustle to just maybe your commute to work. So I think it's definitely something I'd recommend people to do. Even if it's just a little one, they could just go for a walk around their local park. They don't have to drive out miles and do a big 16-mile hike. Like, start off with little steps, and I think it's surprising what it can do for people.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that's a really good point. Like, you know, exercising and walking like around a city is okay, but I think, like you said, it's nice when you're around nature and greenery and trees. Like, trees are very grounding.
Yeah.
Um, and like in Nottingham, you've got Woollerton Hall. I mean, you've got quite a few nice places in Nottingham.
Yeah, there's lots of them dotted around. So there's not like one massive green space, but we've got lots of small green spaces. So like Woollerton Hall, like you said, or Newstead Abbey, which is sort of between Notts and Mansfield. There's
Mm,
Attenborough Nature Reserve, which is sort of more Beeston way. So they're all
mm,
different sides of the city. But
mm.
and you can either walk through bits of woodland, you can walk where there are lakes, you can walk where there's a pond, or you can walk where there's a bit of both. And where the places like that are, there's usually,
Highfields.
yeah, high fields, exactly. And that's got things for the kids. So you can go out as a family without the kids getting bored because there's a little play area, or they can feed the ducks or whatever it may be. So even those with children who may feel restricted on that type of thing, there are places that suit that type of life as well, that type of lifestyle and those needs. So it's something for everybody, and you can choose how far you walk. So what your physical ability is can be adhered to as well. You don't have
Mm,
to think, "Oh no, will I be able to make it up back down again if I walk up that hill," or whatever it may be, because there's always an alternative route you may be able to do. So
yeah,
I think that's good for people as well.
yeah. No, that's it. And with like your photography, you could get Connor and he could like, you know, use him as like a test dummy kind of thing. Like you could like test out the
Yeah.
camera and get a few, go to, you know, get a few locations and stuff.
Oh, it's really sweet what he's done, because obviously he's quite active with his karate, and he goes to the gym a lot. Obviously, lockdown, he's not been able to do gym, but he's been doing his teaching of karate via Zoom, like, you know, so he's still been able to do that. But he'd never really been on walks before, and he knows how much I love it. So we got some walking boots, and I've only taken him on 2 so far, after which he's been knackered on both, but he's still enjoyed himself. So I'm sneaking into it slowly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's
It's a
good.
new
That's
adventure
awesome.
for him.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I think
Yeah.
like you, and when you're both doing it as well, and you're with someone, you're doing something that you enjoy. It's nice to see when, you know, when they enjoy it as well and they get into it.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
yeah, no, that's nice. I think like, trying to think where else is it? Bluebell Woods? Is that a place?
Yeah, there's
Bluebell
Bluebell
Woods.
Woods. You can also go, there's a little place called Stoke Bardolph, and you can walk all the way to Netherfield Lagoons if you go one way, or if you walk the other way, it takes you to sort of Gunthorpe, which is more Nottinghamshire than Nottingham, but you can either walk, it's a walk along the Trent, and you can either, where the lagoons are, there's like a little bit of a nature reserve there, so there's always lots of bird life. Occasionally you might see the odd wild deer. If you walk the other way towards Gunthorpe, you can sometimes see otters. I've only ever seen one otter, unfortunately, and I didn't have my camera
Wow.
on that. The one day I see one, I didn't have my camera, but at least I had
Damn.
that moment, and there was no one else around, so it was like I felt
Yeah.
like I had this moment with this very rare, hardly ever seen little animal, and look, even little things like that just feel really special. Or I saw my first woodpecker during lockdown because I went for a really long walk. No one else was around because, of course, a lot of people haven't been going out and about as often. And I could hear this weird bird call that I'd never heard before. So I was like, well, I'm not in a rush. Let me just wait around a little. And eventually I sort of tracked down to what area it was in, saw my first woodpecker. So even little things like that, which might sound not so much a big deal to other people, to me, that was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen one before. Like, they're hardly ever seen. It's not the same as seeing like a duck or a cat or a dog. It's a rare sighting. So for me, little things like that have been really nice during lockdown. I've seen perhaps more wildlife in England than I've seen in places I've travelled to. Obviously, there's different types of wildlife everywhere, but usually all you see in England is pigeons. So it's nice to spot the rarer things, I think, when you're out on walks like that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's really like what people have seen more wildlife, haven't they,
Definitely.
over lockdown? Because they've, there hasn't been as many cars and people about, so they kind of come more inwards.
Even abroad, I think in Italy they had dolphins coming into the canals of like Venice and areas like that, and there's been places where deer have come out of the woodlands into the villages and stuff where people hardly ever see them, and they're just sort of eating the flowers out of people's front gardens. But it shows you how quickly nature can be saved. Like with this whole global warming thing, in just a few months, China's had blue skies for the first time in years, and the canals in Venice have cleared because they're not as polluted by frequent boat use. So it shows how quickly actually we can turn things around if people have the mindset to do so. So I think that's really nice too.
No, I totally agree. I think like so I've got someone drilling outside. Um, yeah, I totally agree. I think like people, you know, aren't using cars as much, are they? So, you know,
Mm,
certain things are like helping the environment, you know, helping,
definitely.
you know, and I think it's really, really positive. And I think, you know, people can take a lot from it and, you know, think more about, you know, how to go about things.
Yeah.
And like what you said, like, sorry,
No, no, carry on. It's okay.
I said like, yeah, I mean, like with nature and like you said, the woodpecker and the otter, like it's quite rare, isn't it, to see certain animals. I think it makes you appreciate nature and stuff as well. Because like I remember, like
Yeah.
I've heard, you know, an owl near me sometimes,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, wow, yeah,
I bet you get a lot more. I mean, I don't know how much you really get with, you know, with you living so close to the coast. I suppose it's more difficult for you to see certain things because it limits what can really live there. But it must be nice to be, during lockdown, those big empty beaches in Cornwall must have been gorgeous. Because I know you've been taking your dogs out for walks and stuff. They must have loved having the beaches to themselves.
Yeah. I took him on the golf course actually a few times.
Oh, really?
Probably shouldn't have done that, but
Well, it's not in use.
yeah. But yeah, it's been nice. I mean, it is really weird. I think when you're in empty spaces, you see it in a different light, don't you? I suppose you probably saw that on walks in
Yeah,
places you went.
yeah. Emptier places. Because even if there's normally only a handful of people, seeing somewhere completely empty, it's almost eerie, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's just oh, this is a bit different. Like the city centre, because I live not too far from it, I've not really ventured into town during lockdown because I've had no need to. But I sort of walked past it to get onto the canal, and seeing the city centre completely empty on a weekday daytime was so bizarre. So bizarre. Normally it's thriving every day. Even without it being a weekend, there's normally like hundreds of people dotted around, and seeing that completely empty was very strange. It was like a ghost town.
Gosh, that is crazy. I bet it felt weird. Like I remember when I was driving through the dual carriageway. There's a place called Truro, like the nearest town to me, like a big
Yeah.
town. It's called Truro, and I was driving there on the dual carriageway, and it was like the day before lockdown, and there was like I think hardly any cars on the road. And, like the petrol station, there's no one around, and I was like, "This is at night time
What's
as
going
well."
on?
Yeah, it was at night time. It was like something like The Walking Dead. I was like, I'm like the only car on the road. Like, it's really strange.
I know what you mean about The Walking Dead. It has felt sort of like a weird post-apocalyptic zombie movie where all the streets are empty and it's like, oh, what was that sound? It's very strange. And now all of
Yeah,
a sudden, like now that some things have eased up, it's so bizarre. It's hard to know which rules to follow and which ones are going to change and which ones are going to stay the same. Like supermarkets still seem really regimented, but then other shops just seem to be working as normal, and some pubs are absolutely heaving. I've not ventured out to a pub just yet because it's been a bit chaotic from the pictures and videos I've seen like around social media or on the news. But of course people are going to want to do that. They've been pretty much not locked up, but confined for so long. All of a sudden they're going to jump at the opportunity to see their friends or their family, I suppose. But it's hard to know which way to go about it. We're all desperate to see each other, but how safe is it? How safe isn't it? It's not knowing what boundaries to cross, which rules are okay, why is there one rule here but the opposite rule in this place. So I think a lot of people are in a very strange mindset at the moment and don't quite know what's
yeah,
okay to do.
yeah. It's a bit up in the air. I think the government's advice has been a bit all over the place. So
Mm.
I think some people are giving up. They're doing their own thing. Some people are like, going along with it. It's all
Yeah.
very up in the air. I mean, I think compared to some countries, we've been quite relaxed. I mean, I was talking to one lady who said she couldn't go out for 3 days. You have to have a permit to go to the shop. You go to the shop,
Oh,
get your stuff, and then you go back to your flat, and you can't go out for another 3 days. So you need to go out and get what you can. And that was a
right.
lady that's in Dubai,
Yeah, they've been
and they're
very
strict
different rules
anyway.
in different countries. Yeah, they're strict there anyway, so I can imagine with a rule like this, they'd be quite strict with it. I know that in Italy there were a lot of issues. Like a lot of people would, because they couldn't go out at all. I think similar to who you were just talking about, they had to have permission to go to the shop or to the pharmacy, but apart from that, they had to stay inside. They didn't get the. I know originally we all got like the allotted time to have exercise for 1 hour. They didn't even get that. So some people were trying to sneak out, but then they had, I think, patrols in certain cities at least where police or some level of authority would be waiting to catch people doing that. But I think they've been very lenient here. I don't think as many people have been fined as maybe should have been. Whereas other countries, some people
Mm,
have gone to prison for it or have had other
yeah.
types of punishment. And it's so weird to see how many countries have dealt with it in such different ways for the same thing.
Mm.
The rules have just been bizarre. But
Yeah, they've been a bit all over the place, haven't they? I know, like, now they're saying on the 24th of July, I think it is, you have to wear a mask in shops and
yeah,
supermarkets.
but the thing is, although they're doing that, restaurants are remaining open. You can't wear a mask in a restaurant because you then can't eat or drink, and pubs are going to stay open. So I think a lot of people feel quite conflicted with the, hang on a minute, how come I can't go to Tesco's to grab some milk without a mask, but I can sit in a pub for 2 hours and not have to wear one? Like, they just seem very, well, contradictory, I guess. Like, if it's still so unsafe that masks are going to become compulsory, that should surely be in all establishments where there's crowds of people. But I think that's making people a little uneasy, at least, especially in the big cities where maybe shops are slightly larger than they might be in villages or smaller towns. I think no one knows what's going on.
Yeah, yes, yeah, it's a bit up in the air. Just make your own rules up, isn't it? I think some
Yeah.
people are doing.
And then there's a lot of people that, like, when they had when the BLM protests were sort of bigger and all happening at similar times, people were furious about that, of how dare people meet in a group, but those same people are going to pubs in groups. And it's like, you can't, just don't be a hypocrite. Like, you're either okay with crowds or you're not. But at least the BLM was about an important movement, something that actually matters in the long run. A pint in a pub doesn't matter that much in the long run. You can wait till next Saturday or whatever it may be. So I think there's been a lot of online conflict, at least, of people saying one thing, maybe acting another way, okaying one thing, not okaying another thing. And I think people have fallen out quite badly over it, to be honest. Like, there's been a lot of arguments I've seen on Facebook, which is a sad place to argue, but it happens if we're all separate, I guess. It's bizarre. It's like
Yeah,
constant entertainment, just seeing debates every day and every political movement that's going on.
yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of. I think you see the worst and best in people
Yeah,
throughout times of crisis, and I think, like, there's been so much stuff on the internet and social media. Um, lots of movements, lots of discussions, and things like that.
yeah.
There's a comedian I like called Andrew Schultz. Have you seen him? Andrew Schultz.
The name rings a bell, so I may have
He
seen something in the past.
he's on he's on Instagram. He puts these funny videos on where he talks
Yeah.
about, like, Black Lives Matter, and he talks about different things going on.
Mm.
And he kind of puts it in a nutshell in like a 6-minute video. So
Says it how it is, sort of thing.
says it how it is, yeah, and he calls out celebrities and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's, so I think, like, there has been good things that have come out of this whole situation. I think there's been bad things, but it's that yin and yang, isn't it? You can't have one without the other, I think.
Cool.
So
Well, I think, like you were saying, it's sort of both sides of a coin. So it has caused a lot of conflict in some ways, because different people are going to respond to the virus differently. But with people being apart, things like Zoom or FaceTime or social media, as dark as it can be, have become areas of safety, or sort of where people can come together. And people have had Zoom parties, for example. So if you can't see your friend for 4 months, you can still have a video chat with them, and have your glasses of wine or whatever it may be, and play games through Zoom. And although it's not quite the same, it's still kept people connected. And I think there's been a lot of networking on Instagram in particular, I've noticed, where people might have gotten into a new hobby, or they might have seen a recipe, so then they're trying it out themselves and then sharing it to their friends. Or I've noticed one good thing: a lot of people seem to be shopping independently, so from like the little smaller businesses. So I think that, because a lot of them, of course, have shut down during this, so I think social media has been a lifesaver for some small businesses, whether it be them selling like candles or wax melts, or maybe it's clothes that they've made themselves, or little homeware things, whatever it may be. I think social media has been brilliant for that type of thing, but then there's the negative side too, so it's depends which way you look at it, I guess.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, like, that's a good point. It's like, there's that negative to it, and then there's positive. Like, a lot of businesses have been able to stay afloat through, like, social media and doing that.
Yeah, which
So
is fantastic.
yeah,
Or
it's
even
been
start
good.
up. Like,
Mm.
obviously, a lot of people have lost their jobs, whether it's through the virus or whether it's because the companies have gone down. My last day at my job was Friday just gone, so at the minute I'm looking for work. But if there's people applying for a job with 5 roles, say there's normally 20 applicants, there's now a couple of hundred applicants because there's so many people in situations where they're without jobs. So I think social media has been a great place for people to come and talk to about it. It's almost become a type of forum, and I'm in a couple of group chats where people are sending each other, like, whether it's just like cheesy memes where it's got like positive affirmations or quotes on, or they'll say, oh, I've seen this job, I think you'd be good at that, or everyone's supporting each other and lifting each other up. So although it's a really negative place to be, I think it's also brought people together, and everyone's so much more supportive. There's so many community pages on Facebook where people are sort of collecting food for people that have lost their jobs and can't afford it, or whatever it may be. And I think that's been brilliant. That's been something that people never would have been bothered about before. Normally, as soon as people hear the word donation or charity or can you help, they sort of come up with an excuse and run away. So I think it's nice that everyone's so on board with it and everyone's being so supportive and neighbourly, I guess, and a part of a community. It's nice seeing that sort of thing. How nice it's like seeing human nature from a different way. Like, humanity now has faith restored by so many people, which is good. And hopefully
Yeah,
that can last after the virus is gone, if it ever disappears.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think, like I said, there's lots of groups on Facebook and social media that have positive, and there's that kind of community feel to it, especially
Yeah.
probably more so. People are more connected and things from this. I've got a friend whose flat got caught fire. He lived in like
No.
that mill building, and
Yeah.
that caught fire. He lived there, and he's got his own place with his girlfriend now. But like the donations that were given, to people through that, and
Yeah.
clothes donated and things like that. It's crazy. It's really positive. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see positive things coming out of this, and I think that's what you need to focus on, isn't it? More than the news and the negative side.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said to you the other day, it's